Zionism and why it's fascist in a bit. I do want to cover this Rafah situation. I haven't been able to like continue. It's scary that genuinely more people are becoming more anti-Semitic because they're seeing Zionist freaks saying this shit. Yes, but you have to remember, this is why this community and myself, I will always maintain the position, because it's true, that Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism. Zionism cynically uses Judaism as both a shield and a weapon. But 3,000 years of Jewish history, okay, as an ethno-religion and Jewish culture in general, is exactly the opposite of the interest that Zionism presents. And this is not like a theological justification for it. I'm not talking about like the Neturei Karta angle here about how like until the Messiah comes, the Jews are a nationless people, you know, and then they'll magically have a state or whatever. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm talking about like 3,000 years of death and destruction and resistance against oppressive structures. That is the culture and history of Judaism, infinitely more than what this last fucking 75-year Zionist bullshit has been. That is precisely the reason why originally, as we showed yesterday or 2 days ago, in World War II, in the lead up to World War II in Nazi Germany, a big chunk of the German movement against Nazism was conducted by trade unionists, socialists, communists alike, many of which were Jews. That's why the late, great Michael Jamal Brooks used to say that it is his Jewish values that guide him and teach him to resist apartheid, to resist Zionism. Anyway. So it is my position that Zionism, of course, doesn't represent all Jews. Jews are not a fucking monolith. No one is a monolith, okay? And Zionism certainly does not represent all Jews. And as a matter of fact, it is literally the antithetical values that have been cynically put in place by those who want to maintain a ethno-state and take over the entire land in that area, that have literally rewrote Jewish values and Jewish history for the past 75 years and have done it in such a successful way that it is virtually, especially impossible for many people who are directly victims of Zionist suppression, the apartheid, but it is even, it's getting harder and harder for people even in the Western world to separate the two. And I think this is a very dangerous prospect. It's a very dangerous prospect for Jews in general, okay? Not being able to see that Israel is completely separate from Judaism as a whole and Jewish people as a whole is a very dangerous prospect, because the more people start recognizing that Israel is a violent, barbaric ethno-state and an apartheid when it's not doing a unimaginable, untold amount of fucking ethnic cleansing to the Palestinian population. That's the good stuff. That's the peaceful times for Israel. The more people recognize that, and the more all of those instances of Israel cynically fucking tying Judaism to their righteous cause, the harder it gets for people to separate the two. Because people are not very good at critical thinking. Okay? As a whole, we're very dumb. We're not very smart. So when someone is saying like, no, dude, I'm doing this ethnic cleansing for Judaism, people are going to go, okay, I guess he's doing it for Judaism. Well, I don't know. And especially if you've never met an anti-Zionist Jew or never even met a Jewish person at all, as many people living in relatively segregated communities have never met a Jewish person. Not a lot of Jewish people out there in general, right? And certainly not in like heartland America in the middle of the country and shit, unless they are fucking rabid evangelicals who are anti-Semitic, by the way, in many instances, but pro-Israel. you're going to start going, okay, I guess this is just a Jewish thing. And it is shocking to me. It is shocking to me that more people do not recognize this. It is shocking to me that more people don't go, uh-oh, this is not good. Like when you have, okay, when you have the Apartheid Defense League, the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, as they call themselves, making statements about like the UN condemning Israel, or making statements about the ICC prosecuting Benjamin Netanyahu, you are literally actively saying like, fuck anti-Semitism. I don't give a shit about that at all. I care about Israel and Israel only, okay? And people see that. But why are so many white nationalists that are pro-Israel? I don't understand it genuinely. Don't their hatred override their desire to be pro-Israel? A couple different reasons. Some white nationalists hate Jews more than they, I guess, like marginally hate Jews more than they hate Muslims, and like that they have a ethno-state and are like, we want that as well, and are jealous that Israel gets to have an ethno-state and hate Jews in general. So that like rabid anti-Semitism kicks in, so they're anti-Israel. And then the broader white nationalist movement, comprised of like the evangelicals that don't do the reading to become like avowed open Nazis and whatever. Those white nationalists, you know, the average, the real nefarious white nationalism that that lives at the heart of the Republican Party. Those guys, well, they love Israel. They're pro-Israel because of, one, theological reasons, like, you know, Israel, chosen sons and daughters of God, have to maintain all that land so that Jesus Christ can come back to earth in Megiddo and fight against the fucking Muslim hordes. They also love Israel because, like, some people see Israel as like the stopgap. You know what I mean? They think that like Israel is like fighting against Islamic hordes in the middle of that region, and that's why they're a very valuable ally. You know, there's a multitude of different reasons. Some of them like that it's a apartheid again. That some of them are just straight up fascists, and they're like, I ride for fascism, no matter who's doing it. They know the anti-Semitism charge is meritless, but normies who don't pay close attention are generically anti-bigotry. It's a way of poisoning the well so that people are scared of speaking out less. They be labeled a bigot. Yeah, except the difference is that shit is the reason why many progressives immediately after October 7th were like, whoa, I can't believe you. Are you saying that you're like pro-Hamas? What the fuck? Are you pro-terrorism? What's happening here? Are you a little anti-Semitic? Did I not catch this? Right? Like, there's a reason for why that anti-Semitism, a cynical deployment of anti-Semitism for anyone who's an anti-Zionist, worked for like a brief window of time. Okay? Think about it this way. You're slowly seeing a lot more people trickle back into this community. Thank you for doing this. I'm Palestinian. Never thought the world would actually open their eyes to what is actually going on. Thanks for spreading the truth, brother. Yeah. One thing shared between Zionism and fascism is the central role of fear in society. This myth of ever-present, almost conspiratorial existential danger from minorities, i.e. the Arabs all want to kill us, which lets nationalism perpetuate itself uncritically. Like you said, Israel is distinct in that for Jews, there is real long history of repression as a powerless minority, though this time the power dynamics are reversed. Plus, of course, Islamophobia lets Zionist imagination run wild. Yeah. Oh, the other reason is because like a lot of the ultra Zionist anti-Semites also just want Jews to go and live in the fucking desert away from them. They're like, oh, I don't want you touching my money. Go over there. Like that is another reason, and that's precisely the reason why this fucking asshole that is on your screen right now, this fucking asshole right here, up here, okay, Mr. Holocaust revisionist himself, can get away with aligning with open anti-Semitic fascists like Viktor Orban. How can he do that? Because it's perfect. It's like if Jews feel less safe in the Western world, they have to come to Israel, where they will magically be safe, I guess, except not really. The manufacturing of consent is happening in real time. Yeah. We will show you that in a second. Let's continue.
We're investigating the incident and we'll reach conclusions because this is our policy.
But these Palestinians...
Honestly, I think that the fact that it took the Holocaust to even bring an actual sizable amount of Jews on board with the Zionist project, even though it had been around for like 50 years at that point, shows how removed it is from practical Jewish culture. Yes. Yeah, I mean, Jews were very resistant to Zionism initially. Like, and I don't think there's ever been a point in history. I don't think there's ever been a point in history where there were more Jewish Zionists than there were Christian Zionists, even at the inception. Okay? Like, there's never been more Jewish Zionists in totality than there are Christian Zionists. Always.
Accompanying bodies for burial say the Israelis are liars and that condemnation from the International Court of Justice is meaningless. The situation in Gaza was described by one aid worker today as beyond catastrophic, though it never seems catastrophic enough to force Israel into changing course.
Well, I've been speaking to Sam Rose, who's the Director of Planning at the UN's Agency for Palestinians, UNRWA. He heard last night's strike from around 2 miles away in Al-Mawasi, where he's helping coordinate the humanitarian effort. I asked him for his reaction to what's happened.
Absolutely. I mean, this incident is particularly sickening, given the images, but also given the circumstances and the fact that so many women and children were killed, suffering horrific burns, but also being killed through shrapnel wounds. And I mean, it feels like we plumb new depths almost every day with what we see. But yeah, really, really heartbreaking, really sickening.
What do you make of the way the information comes out, or what can we read from that? In that, at first, Israel explained the attack and explained that they were targeting particular members of Hamas, and it's taken a few hours, but now they've said this was a tragic error.
I mean, we've seen attack after attack. We're at now 36,000 people killed, the majority women and children, given the breakdown of the population. So tragically, this is one incident amongst many, around 100 people killed in other parts of the Gaza Strip overnight, we understand, at least according to the figures of the Ministry of Health. I mean, what appears to have happened on this, and I can't comment on Israeli military strategy or communications, is it's the almost universal outcry and horror of this coming on top of everything else and the circumstances in which it happened. A camp of civilians, a camp of largely women and children who've been forced to flee to these areas anyway, been assured that these areas were part of a safe humanitarian zone, and coming so close to the ruling from the International Court of Justice, the highest judicial body in the UN, calling for a halt to the conflict. This is what we've seen.
Israel also says it did kill Hamas leaders in this attack. Does that mean it is routine that Hamas is mixing in the civilian population, even in areas that are supposed to be for internally displaced people?
I mean, these are very, very crowded areas of Gaza, very built-up areas. It's impossible to say with any certainty, but there are rules of war. There are rules of war on the Hamas side, but there are rules of war on the Israeli side, and on both sides, in terms of protecting the civilian nature of certain areas. But there are also rules regarding proportionality and avoiding excessive civilian casualties. And when you have an incident like this, it's hard to see what immediate military objective could justify such an attack.
The reason why Channel 4 and every other the reason why a journalist will ask these questions is not because he believes it. It's because he needs the expert to fucking clarify for the average person. This is not for you. This is for your dad, okay? This is for your mom. You need to understand, like, I am already well poisoned, okay? The well has been poisoned a million times over for someone like myself, especially when, you know, I am, despite the fact that I look very white, my name is Hasan, okay? Many people are not going to listen to me. Your parents, I mean. Or many people who have heard time and time again how much of an Islamist fundamentalist I am and how much I love terrorism and how I fucking think America bad. That's all I care about is America bad. They're not going to listen to me, which is precisely the reason why. This is precisely the reason why when Channel 4 is conducting itself this way as a outlet of journalism, they are going to ask these sorts of questions. This is the type of shit that you're supposed to be showing your parents who are just like a little bit confused about what's going on and can have their well poisoned. No, poisoning of the well is what I was referencing. I'm not saying well poised. My mom likes your take on Conan.
I mean, this comes after recent statements by both the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. What is the mood where you are now about what is going on in the light of all of that?
The mood is one of numbness, it's one of hopelessness, it's one of exhaustion and despair. People, you know, how long is this going to go on? And this real dread that there will just be more of this unless it comes to an end. I mean, people here are absolutely exhausted. They've got violence, brutal violence impacting every aspect of their life and their being. So really, really desperate times right now for the people of Gaza.
Sam, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Christian.
Hello, I'm Geetha Gurumuthy. Welcome to BBC News Now. And we begin with the Israel-Gaza war. And there is growing condemnation of an airstrike near Rafah, which Palestinian officials say killed at least 45 people, including women and children at a refugee camp. An Israeli government spokesman says the initial findings of its investigation are that an airstrike against a Hamas compound nearby set off a fire which killed the Palestinian civilians. The Palestinian presidency in the occupied West Bank described the strike as a massacre and accused Israel of...
Wait, what? Hassan, we should be making sure Trump doesn't get elected. If you keep on saying untrue things like Israel's an apartheid or genocide, you only help him get reelected, and then you'll see a real genocide that we could have prevented. Hassan, why don't you talk about how Hamas uses human shields to protect their military offensive? It's kind of gross, honestly. I love when the October 7 leavers come back in to chirp. No, this is just like, this is straight up. It's not even blue and on. This person doesn't give a shit about anything. It's just that untrue things like Israel's an apartheid. Brother, there are certain things that I'm not going to compromise on. Okay. Do I believe that Donald Trump would be worse than Joe Biden? Absolutely. Whether it be for Palestinians, whether it be for the entire world. However, in an effort to defend Joe Biden, who is currently literally participating in the ethnic cleansing campaign, if you think that I'm going to turn around and fucking lie and act like Joe Biden isn't doing that, or lie even further and act like Israel is not an apartheid, you are out of your fucking mind. Be for fucking real.
deliberately targeting displaced people. Egypt has also condemned the attack and called on Israel to implement the order by the International Court of Justice to halt its military offensive in Rafah. French President Emmanuel Macron says he's outraged by the Israeli strikes on Rafah, and Qatar also says it could hinder reaching a ceasefire deal. Well, it came just hours after Hamas said it had launched a rocket attack on Tel Aviv on Sunday. Several were intercepted by air defence systems, according to the Israeli military. Dan Johnson has this report.
This was Israel.
If you truly care about Joe Biden not losing to Donald Trump, instead of doing this dumb shit and portraying yourself as a genocide denier, you should probably be smiling and dialing. One, you should probably be trying to pressure the Biden administration to change course on Israel. That's number one. And when you're done with that, you should be calling people to explain to them why voting for Joe Biden would be better. You know what I mean? That's probably a little bit more productive for you, because coming in here, one of the most consistently pro-Palestinian fucking communities and thinking that you're going to make this kind of impact is silly. You just want people to yell at you. You want to possibly clip the reaction. And then you want to go back to your subreddit and be like, see, I did it. I fought the good fight. Pick better battles. Yeah, that was like this news clipping is from like literally 20 years ago at this point, I think. Maybe even longer. Anyway. I just ignore Hasanabi when he starts spewing buzzwords like apartheid, systemic racism, feminism, genocide, etc. What? Buzzwords? Okay. Isn't that a Brianna Wu tweet? No, it's a Bernelli take. I love how personally, intellectually incurious so many fucking people are, that they unironically posture like they're somehow better than these like Republican charlatans, right? Because that's like straight up the take that you would hear from a dude who's like a MAGA supporter. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, these fucking buzzwords like systemic racism, it doesn't exist. Shut the fuck up. Meanwhile, this supposedly elite community comprised of like all of the greatest minds you've ever seen that spend an unimaginable amount of time on Reddit have basically dulled themselves and negatively polarized themselves into this position where they're literally operating on anti-intellectual boundaries. Like they just straight up, there's no difference than buzzword like feminism is a straight up anti-intellectual sentiment. That's it. How the fuck do you carry yourself as like beacons of as titans of intellectual honesty that you can only arrive at through debate, while simultaneously saying stuff like, well, that's just a buzzword, man. Genocide is just a buzzword. No, that chatter is just making a joke, or basically repeating what some of my naysayers say. It's crazy though. It's crazy how so many people have fallen into this trap from the pure animosity, operating on pure animosity towards a political commentator, who then turn around and champion anti-intellectual sentiment like that.
Israel's airstrike late last night in southern Gaza. It says targeting senior Hamas figures with precision weapons. But look what it did to the nearby camp where thousands of Palestinians were sheltering. Israel says it was striking legitimate targets in line with international law. But many of these people had already been uprooted many times through this conflict. Suddenly we heard the sound of a missile, Fadi says. We ran and found the street covered in smoke. We couldn't see anything. Then we found a girl and a young man who'd been blown to pieces.
U.S.-made small-diameter bomb, SDB GBU 39 fragments visible in the Rafah strike. This is from the rear control section. Good stuff. That's your tax dollars at play, baby. That's Brandon's it's Brandon's weapons right there at play.
Women and children are among the casualties here in what they believed was a safe humanitarian zone. This morning, Israeli drones surveyed the damage as people questioned how this could happen.
We heard a very loud sound and saw fire. The kids were screaming, and all the rooms surrounding us were made out of metal sheets. The sound was terrifying.
We set up our tents here, and it has been targeted. They killed our children and burned our women and elderly in the place they claimed was safe. This is our 7th time being displaced.
Earlier yesterday, Hamas reminded Israelis it remains a threat. Tel Aviv came under rocket attack for the first time in months.
This also is yet another instance where the Israeli war is just a failure, an abject failure. Anytime there's fucking air raid sirens, anytime there's bomb sirens in any part of Israel that isn't like, I guess, northern Israel, it's just another reminder that like the entire ethnic cleansing project was an abject failure. Another thing that is very important to consider, in my opinion. Because it's like, I thought you were eliminating Hamas. What the fuck happened? Like, it's been 8 months. I don't know if my autism that makes me have blunted emotions towards the conflict, but I will never understand how anybody can see Hamas, not good, condemn, throw a rock against the greatest anti-defense system in the world, and then Israel glasses the Palestinians in response and think that both sides are equal, or if Hamas simply laid down their arms, everything would be chill. Who holds the bigger stick to enact change? Yeah, no, it is that simple. It is literally that simple. It's just Israel has all of the power to stop this and choose not to.
There are questions over Israel's military strategy and an international court ruling against it.
Israel continues the military action that has been asked to stop. Also, Hamas is launching rockets against Israel, so both sides doesn't respect the ruling of the court.
This is so funny. Yeah, dude, I know. It's so crazy. It's so crazy. I can't believe Hamas is lobbing rockets into Israel still. Oh, man. Who's really the bigger villain here? I can't really put my finger on it. How many Israelis have been killed since October 7? Just oh, that's right. Actually, hundreds potentially of Israelis have been killed since October 7. They were hostages in Gaza and Israel killed them. So there is that aspect. That is true. I forgot because they're functionally Palestinian at that point because they're inside of the kill zone. They happen to be inside of the kill zone and therefore they are now functionally Palestinian. And also that means they are Hamas.
Israel says a review will examine this loss of life. But it's Palestinians who count their dead and wonder where in Gaza they can find safety.
Dan Johnson reporting. Well, Avi Hyman is a spokesman for the Israeli government. He explained the objective of the Israeli strike on Rafah.
What happened last night, sadly, There is no moral equivalence between the two things. What happened last night is we went after 2 high-value Hamas targets, and it appears from initial reports that somehow...
Damn, dude, what happened to that fucking initial report? Oh, shit. Perhaps they should have they should have just waited a little bit longer before coming out and chirping. Except, of course, it never really, there's no punishments for this kind of behavior. So it doesn't really matter. Why would you not lie on television if no one fucking fact checks you? Or if no one goes, hey, didn't you lie like this before? And like 100 times in the past 8 months? Yeah. I mean, this, like I said, this is a newspaper clipping for like 25 years ago. I don't know exactly when it's from. Israel style public relations. Sir, a quick guide to Israel's PR methods. 1, we haven't heard reports of deaths. We'll check into it. 2, people were killed, but by a faulty Palestinian rocket/bomb. 3, okay, we killed them, but they were terrorists. 4, okay, they were civilians, but they were being used as human shields. 5, okay, there were no fighters in the area, so it was our mistake, but we kill civilians by accident. They do it on purpose. 6, okay, we kill far more civilians than they do, but look at how terrible other countries are. 7, why are you still talking about Israel? Are you some kind of anti-Semite? Test this against the next interview you hear or watch. Adam Johannes, Secretary Cardiff, Stop the War Coalition. That literally, this is not even from, this is not from like this round, okay? This round of ethnic cleansing. I forget exactly where, when this was posted, but it was like fucking 20 years ago, I think. It's literally from 2001, I think. I've been saying this since day one. They killed a third of Hamas fighters while they recruit a bunch more, destroyed only a third of the tunnels, bombed a bunch of hostages, and strengthened Hamas politically to unprecedented extents. The only achievement is a temporary weakening of Hamas's direct civil/military control. It's not just genocidal, it's completely nonsensical. Well, genocide is completely nonsensical. Think about it this way. The final solution. Think about the final solution for a second. What the fuck are you doing wasting resources while you open up new fronts of the war and get your shit pushed in? Genocide is always nonsensical. Like, that's the whole point. This is why we say fascism is a death cult. This is why we say fascism is like inherently a suicidal ideology. It just makes no sense when you're like, well, what are we doing here? Is a question one must ask. It's from 2014, I think, still long ago. Oh, okay. It's not from 2001. It's from 2014. Still 10 years ago. And still not after October 7. What is this? Liberals keep outing themselves. Me watching Muslims get deported under the new Muslim ban that the 6-3 court upholds. That's sick, man. How are you any different than a Trump supporter? I don't understand why liberals will be like, if you don't vote for Trump, unimaginable. I mean, if you don't vote for Brandon, sorry. If you don't vote for Joe Biden, an untold amount of cruelty will happen to you that Trump will do, and I will enjoy it. Then vote for Trump, dumbass. The fuck do you mean? Like, what are we doing? It makes no sense. What you're saying is that you don't give a shit. For those wondering how Trump will be handling the war in Gaza, protests on college campuses, and efforts to create a Palestinian state, if you get me reelected, we're going to set that movement back 25 to 30 years. One thing I do, any student that protests, I throw them out of the country. You know, there are a lot of foreign students. As soon as they hear that, they're going to behave. Okay. So, again, Brandon level of dealing with the protests, maybe a little bit further. Is that what it is? Okay. That's cool, man. I like that Morning Joe, Joe Brandon, and Donald Trump are almost entirely aligned on this. That's great.
How a fire broke out, and that was that sadly took the lives of others. Now I say it appears to because it is under investigation, and the IDF investigates every accident of this nature to see what actually happened.
Well, Shayna Lowe from the Norwegian Refugee Council in Jerusalem expressed shock at the strike in Rafah.
We are just as shocked as everyone seeing the images coming out of Gaza late last night and early this morning. This is a clear sign of why the implementation of the ICJ's order last week on halting military operations in Gaza in Rafah is so necessary. It's truly unconscionable to think that you know, it's almost 8 months into this, we are still seeing images of women, children, civilians being targeted and killed in such a way.
The head of Gaza's largest United Nations agency, UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini, says the strikes in Rafah are a reminder that nowhere is safe in Gaza.
I cannot comment on the casualties because we haven't been able to properly communicate with our team on the ground. I saw images. They are deeply disturbing and horrifying. I think we have been clear more than once. There is no safe space in Gaza.
Will it ever get to a point where the UN security force will be sent into Israel? They can't override the U.S.? No. As long as the United States is a part of the Security Council, okay, a part of the permanent members, the permanent 5 members of the Security Council, there will be no action from the UN because as the permanent members of the Security Council, they have veto power and they will always override any kind of action that the United Nations engages in.
Well, we will go back to Dan Johnson in a few minutes for an update on all the very latest on events there.
We have heard that there is this ongoing investigation. What the Israeli military is saying is that they targeted 2 people not in this area, near this area, 2 Hamas operatives, Yassin Rabia and Khaled Najjar, who were part of the Hamas Gaza office, if you like, that ran Hamas in the West Bank. They say it was a legitimate target and that was who they meant to strike at. What now appears from what they are saying is that this area of Tel Sultan, which was full of people in tents, they'd moved there to avoid other areas of war. This wasn't an area, by the way, that Israel had told Palestinians that they should evacuate. That somehow related to that airstrike, it now seems, the fire began. And once the fire began, it was extremely hard to put out. And that's why we saw such awful pictures last night. And we're now seeing that the numbers of dead are rising.
You are such a fucking scumbag. Dude, it's crazy that like this. I mean, here's the good side, bad side. Okay? Here's the good side, bad side. We're going to do that in a second. We'll do every place America is bombed and why to reinforce the America bad thing. The bad side is obviously, France 24 is still running fucking defense for Israel. The silver lining here, however, is that they're running out of options. Okay? Because anyone that hears them trying to be like, well, it was it's not the best. You know, they were just like trying to deal with like high-ranking Palestinian leaders, Hamas leaders that work for the, you know, they're in charge of like West Bank operations. And then there was a fire, and maybe Israel told them that that area was safe, but maybe it wasn't safe. Like, notice how the Defense for Israel has moved, okay, from... Notice how the Defense for Israel has moved from like, no, they deserve it. This is totally just. Remember October 7th to like, it's just like they didn't mean it. And it's a set of unforeseeable actions that were put in place, like a domino effect that decapitated babies. You know what I mean? That's just a domino oopsie. That's a big oopsie, but it is what it is. Like that, in my opinion, also, I guess, as the permanent optimist in this situation, in spite of all of the untold cruelty that we have been looking at and staring at for the past fucking 8 months, is still not the worst thing. Israel's biggest coup was always their PR and complicity of the MSM, and they're burning that to the ground at an irreplaceable level. Yes, without complete Western support, Israel cannot conduct itself in the way that it does. Okay, they just can't do that. And because they are so horny to kill,